You can ignore it, you can distract yourself, you can keep running like everything's fine, but eventually, whatever you're running from is going to catch up to you. And nobody learned that harder than Jonah.
The eternal word, a light unto the ages, now revealed.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bible Told with Pastor Rod. If this is your first time here, like this video, share it, and make sure you subscribe. So, can I ask you something? Have you ever had a moment where you knew deep down inside you were supposed to do something, and instead of stepping toward it, you quietly went the other way? Not because you were confused, not because you didn't have clarity, but because you did. You understood exactly what it meant. You knew what it would require from you. The conversation you didn't want to have, the decision you didn't want to make, the place you didn't want to go. So you told yourself, instead of facing it, I'll deal with it later. And at first, it almost feels like you made the right choice. Things get quiet. The pressure lifts. You convince yourself, well, maybe it wasn't that serious to begin with. Maybe you were overthinking it. Maybe it'll just go away on its own. And for a moment, it feels like peace. But then something starts to shift. You can't fully settle. You can't relax. It's like something just under the surface won't leave you alone. So you try to distract yourself. What do? You stay busy. You move forward like everything is fine. But in quiet moments, it's still there. That feeling, that knowing, that tension you can't quite explain. And maybe you've called it stress or bad timing or just life being life. But what if it's not any of those things? What if it's something deeper? What if you're not just avoiding something? What if you're running? Because there was a man just like that. A man who made a decision to walk away from something he knew he was supposed to face. He didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even try to negotiate. He just ran. And for a moment, it looked like he got away with it. But what happened next is where everything changes. And if you've ever felt that tension, that pull, that quiet knowing you've been trying to ignore, then this story is going to hit closer than you think.
There was a man, not ordinary, not unaware, a man who heard God clearly. Not once, not vaguely, but with a kind of clarity most people never experience. His name was Jonah. And one day, a message came to him, direct, unmistakable, impossible to ignore. God told him to go to a city called Nineveh. Now, Nineveh wasn't just any place. It was known, it was feared, it was a city with much violence, corruption, and people who had no desire to change. The kind of people you don't volunteer to go to. The kind of place you avoid. And Jonah understood exactly what that meant. This wasn't just a trip. It was a confrontation. Something uncomfortable, something unpredictable, something that would pull him completely out of his control. And here's what makes this moment so real. You see, Jonah didn't misunderstand the assignment. He didn't need more information about the assignment. He didn't hesitate trying to figure it out. He knew exactly what God was asking. And he made a decision. But instead of going toward Nineveh, Jonah turned and went the opposite direction. Not a step away, not a slight detour. He went as far as he possibly could. He went down to the port, found a ship, paid the price, and got on board. Because in his mind, if he could just get far enough away, he wouldn't have to deal with it. And for a moment, it felt like he got away. He didn't hesitate. That's what makes this moment so powerful. Jonah didn't stand there wrestling with the decision. He didn't stop to pray again. He didn't ask for another sign. The moment he heard what God was asking of him, something inside of him shut down. And instead of moving toward the call, he moved away from it as far as he could. So Jonah went down to the port, and the further he walked, the louder the world around him became. Merchants shouting across crowded streets, sailors hauling cargo onto ships, wood creaking beneath heavy crates, the smell of salt water, fish, sweat, smoke, all of it blending together into noise and movement and distraction. People everywhere, voices everywhere, and maybe for the first time since God spoke to him, his mind finally started to quiet down. Because sometimes the easiest way to avoid what's happening inside you is to surround yourself with enough noise that you don't have to hear it anymore. So Jonah kept moving, head down, focused, determined, not toward purpose, toward escape. And somewhere in the middle of all of those ships, all those people, all that movement, he found exactly what he was looking for. A ship headed in the opposite direction. Not close by, not nearby, far away. As far away from Nineveh as he could possibly get. And the dangerous part is, it probably felt like confirmation. Because isn't that how running works sometimes? The door opens too easily, the opportunity shows up too quickly, everything lines up perfectly, and you start convincing yourself maybe this is meant to happen. Maybe this is the better option. Maybe this is the easier path for a reason. So Jonah didn't question it. He didn't slow down. He paid the price, and he stepped on board. And as his feet crossed onto that ship, something shifted inside him. Because now it was real. Now he was committed. The ropes were untied. The sails caught the wind. The dock slowly began to drift further and further away. And as the shoreline faded into the distance, Jonah stood there, watching the place he came from disappear behind him. No confrontation, no responsibility, no uncomfortable calling hanging over his head anymore, just distance. And little by little, the pressure started fading. His breathing slowed down. His thoughts weren't racing the same way anymore. The tension that had wrapped itself around his chest when God first spoke to him didn't feel quite as heavy now. And that's the thing about running. At first, it feels like peace. No chaos, no danger, relief. Like you finally escaped the pressure, like you finally created enough distance between yourself and the thing you didn't want to face. And standing there on that ship, with the ocean stretching endlessly in front of him, and Nineveh disappearing somewhere behind him, Jonah started believing something dangerous. Maybe he really did get away. Maybe if he kept moving long enough, he'd never have to face it at all.
Now be honest. Haven't there been moments in your life where walking away actually felt easier? Where avoiding the conversation felt easier than actually having the conversation? Where ignoring the problem felt easier than facing the problem head on? Where creating distance felt better than dealing with the weight of what was sitting in your heart? Because that's what makes running so dangerous. It rarely feels wrong in the beginning. Most of the time it feels like relief. And that's exactly where Jonah is right now. Think about this. The ship is moving. The shoreline is going to disappear. The pressure is going to fade. And for the first time in a while, he thinks he'll be able to breathe again. No confrontation, no responsibility, no uncomfortable assignment waiting on him anymore. Just distance. And y'all, the scary part is a lot of people watching this know exactly what that feels like. Be honest. You tell yourself you're just tired. You tell yourself you just need space. You tell yourself now ain't the right time. And maybe nobody around you even notice it yet. Because on the outside, everything still looks calm, but deep down inside, you know there's something you've been avoiding, something you've been pushing further and further away because you already know how heavy it's going to be once you finally face it. And the longer Jonah sits on this ship, the more convinced he becomes that maybe he really did get away with it. Maybe the silence means he's safe. Maybe the calm. Maybe it means that he made the right decision. Maybe if enough time passes, he'll never have to face it all. But sometimes, y'all, the most dangerous moments in your life is when running starts feeling comfortable.
The ocean was calm, the kind of calm that almost feels unreal. The waves moved gently beneath the ship, barely making a sound, as if everything had settled into place. Above him, the sky stretched out wide and clear, soft lights resting on the water, no clouds, no wind, no sign that anything was wrong. There was no warning, no tension in the air, no voice interrupting the silence, just stillness. And in that quiet, Jonah began to breathe a little easier. His shoulders loosened, his thoughts slowed down. The urgency he once felt started to fade, replaced by something that felt almost like relief. Like maybe it wasn't as serious as he thought. Maybe it could wait. Maybe it didn't matter as much anymore. Because that's what silence can do. It can make you believe everything is fine, even when it isn't. It can convince you that distance equals escape, that because nothing is happening, nothing will. And as the ship drifted further and further away from where he was supposed to be, that silence settled in. The kind of silence that makes you think you got away. Then everything changed. What was once still started to move. The wind shifted, subtle at first, just enough to be noticed. The air grew heavier. The sky that had been so clear began to darken, slowly swallowing the light. And before anyone could make sense of it, the sea exploded. Waves rose up out of nowhere, crashing violently against the ship, throwing it side to side like it weighed nothing. The calm was gone, replaced by chaos. Water poured over the deck. The wood groaned under pressure. Men shouted over the roar of the storm, grabbing ropes, trying to hold everything together as fear spread from one end of the ship to the other. This wasn't just weather. This was overwhelming, uncontrollable, relentless. And as everything around him fell apart, as panic took over the ship, as the storm showed no sign of slowing down, Jonah was asleep.
Well, isn't this something? Isn't it crazy how people can see their whole life shaking apart and still act like everything's fine? That's Jonah right now, y'all. Think about this. The ship is breaking. The storm is getting worse. Everybody around him panicking. Look, can you imagine the wind just blowing heavy? The rain probably feel like sharp little needles hitting your skin. These people are fighting to survive. If you were on the ship, ladies, and you had on your wig, it would have flown off. And this man, Jonah, is downstairs asleep. And look, if we gonna be real now, a lot of people do the exact same thing. What do you mean, Pastor Rod? Well, not physically, but emotionally. You see these relationships falling apart. You feel the anxiety getting heavier. You know something in your life is off. You can't sleep right anymore. You're tossing, you're turning. You can't think straight anymore. You're tired all of the time. You're frustrated for no reason. You're angry for no reason. And you're numb for no reason. But instead of dealing with it, what do? You try to sleep through it. You try to distract yourself. Maybe I can stay busy. Maybe let me keep scrolling. Maybe let me laugh louder. Maybe keep people around me so I never have to sit alone and think about these thoughts. Because deep down, you already know something's wrong. Be honest. And the hardest part, y'all, the longer you ignore it, the louder the storm is gonna get. Jonah thought he's cool, sleeping during the storm. And eventually, just like Jonah, you're gonna wake up one day and realize the thing you kept running from has been right there the whole time.
They went down below deck and shook him awake, hard, urgent, voices raised over the storm that refused to let up. The ship was breaking apart. The men were desperate, and he was asleep in the middle of it. But the moment Jonah opened his eyes, he knew. Not confusion, not guessing, not trying to figure it out. He knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't just a storm passing through. This was because of him. And in that moment, everything became clear. The running, the distance, the silence, it all caught up at once. What he had been trying to avoid was now standing right in front of him, louder than ever. The storm wasn't the problem, it was the result. And surrounded by fear, with the weight of it pressing in from every side, Jonah looked at them, and he said the words no one wants to say. This storm is on me. They didn't want to do it. You could see it in their faces, in their hesitation, in the way they held back for just a moment, longer than they should have. No one wanted to be the one to make that decision. No one wanted that weight on their hands. But the storm wasn't stopping. The waves kept crashing, the ship kept breaking, the fear kept rising, and eventually they realized something. They didn't have a choice. So with everything around them shaking, with the wind still howling and the sea refusing to let up, they took a hold of him and they threw him over. For a split second, there was chaos, water crashing, movement, impact, and then, instantly, everything stopped. The wind died, the waves settled, the sea went still, just like that, as if the storm had never been there at all, and all that remained was silence. Then came the darkness, not all at once, but fast enough that there was no time to adjust. The last light above him disappeared as he sank deeper, the surface fading, the silence of the storm and the ship vanishing until there was nothing left but the presence of the peep. There was no control, no direction, no way back, just the weight of the water closing in from every side. And then something moved, something massive. Something he couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't escape. In a moment, he didn't choose and couldn't stop. He was swallowed. And just like that, everything went silent. No wind, no waves, no voices, just darkness. Thick, heavy, unmoving darkness. The kind that makes you lose track of time, where seconds stretch longer than they should, where there's nowhere to look, nowhere to go, nothing to reach for, and in that place, with nothing left to distract him, nothing left to run toward or away from, it was just him and the full weight of where running had led him.
Whoo, man. You know what? And maybe this is the part that hits the hardest, because by now, we all know Jonah realized something. Running didn't actually take him away from it. It took him straight to it. Every step, every distraction, every delay, every time he convinced himself, I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. It wasn't removing the weight. It was carrying him deeper into it, because that's the truth that nobody talks about. Running doesn't make things disappear. I know, I tried. It only pushes them further down the road, and eventually they come back harder. They come back heavier. They come back closer and harder to ignore. And if we're going to be honest, some of you know exactly what this feels like. Things don't feel right anymore. You feel it. You've been trying to keep moving, trying to stay distracted, trying to act like everything's normal, but deep down, there's something you know you've been avoiding. Something you don't even want to look at anymore because you already know how heavy it's become. And now, just like Jonah, everything that was buried is starting to surface. And here's the part that changes everything. Because when Jonah hit the lowest point in his life, when the storm was over, the noise was gone, and he finally found himself alone in the dark, that wasn't the end of his story. And maybe this isn't the end of yours either. Because what if even here, in the place you never thought you'd be, in the place where everything finally caught up, in the middle of all the regret, of all the exhaustion, and all the weight you've been carrying, what if you're not alone? What if God is still there?
And finally, in the dark, with nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to distract him, nowhere else to go, Jonah stopped running. Not because it suddenly became easy, not because everything made sense, but because he had reached a point where running wasn't an option anymore. There was no more pretending, no more avoiding, no more distance he could create between himself and what he had been trying to escape. It had all caught up to him. Every decision, every step in the wrong direction, every moment he chose to walk away instead of face it. And in that silence, in that place where everything felt stripped away, Jonah did the one thing he hadn't done yet. He turned, not physically, but inwardly. Honestly, completely, and for the first time since all of this began, he stopped trying to control it, stopped trying to outrun it, stopped trying to bury it, and he prayed.
Running always feels like freedom in the beginning, doesn't it? It feels like relief, like you finally escaped the pressure, like you created enough distance between yourself and the thing you didn't want to face. And for a while, it almost convinces you that, hey, you made the right choice. You start telling yourself maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe you just needed space. Maybe if you ignored it long enough, it would disappear on its own. But it doesn't. Because eventually the silence fades. And whatever you were running from, it's going to catch up to you. That's what happened to Jonah. He ran as far as he could. He got on the ship. He watched the shoreline disappear. Felt the pressure lift off his shoulders. He thought he finally had escaped it until the storm came. And maybe that's why this story hits so hard, because a lot of people know exactly what that feels like. You can smile in front of people and still feel lost inside. Has that been you? You're smiling in front of people because you don't want people to know how hurt, how hard you're really struggling inside. You can stay busy all day and still feel the weight the moment everything gets quiet. You can keep pushing things down, keep distracting yourself, keep telling yourself, I'm fine, I'm going to be okay, I'm fine. While your whole soul is telling you, I'm exhausted. And the scary part is, sometimes you don't even realize you're running until everything around you starts falling apart. But here's what I need you to understand. Jonah's story is not really about a storm. It's about a God who refused to let him go. Because even in the middle of Jonah's rebellion, God still was pursuing him, even deep in the water. God was still there. Even in the darkness, God was listening. And maybe that's what this moment is for somebody watching right now. Maybe this isn't random. You're not here by mistake. Maybe this feeling you've had, this tension that's pulling in your spirit, this exhaustion you can't explain, it's not punishment. Maybe it's pursuit. Because the truth is, you can run from a place, you can run from people, you can run from responsibility, you can run from conversations, you can even run from parts of yourself, but you can't outrun God. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of this whole story. Because if God was still there for Jonah after all of the running, after all of the avoidance, after all of the wrong turns, then just maybe he's still there for you too. Even now, even here, even after everything you think he wouldn't forgive you. Oh no, I've done this. He's still here. So maybe the answer isn't to keep running. Maybe the answer is finally turning around. Because Jonah's story changed the moment he stopped trying to escape and finally surrendered. And maybe, just maybe, that moment for you is right now. And remember, when the world is still trying to figure things out, the Bible told it first.